In this video, I want to run through an application called Paperless Protocols, which I wrote several years ago. This application is totally focused on qualification protocols only, the actual execution of test scripts and test cases, and how the attachments are added and so on. It's supposed to be a completely digital version of a protocol. So if I have, say, for example, a protocol like this here, where you have basically purpose, scope, the face of the protocol, system overview. You've basically got the execution strategy and how the deviations are handled, etc. And then kind of you move into the basics, where you actually have the test cases. If I just scroll down to something, say for example here, you just effectively have like the standardized test steps. You basically got the results, and you kind of sign off the protocol and so on. So the concept of this application is that it's supposed to be a digital version of that, and it's something that I have a good bit of experience with. So I have executed many protocols in different sites, and I've also used several different paperless digital kind of protocol systems. There's not too many out there, certainly not as many as document management systems, but there's some options that are coming out there, and I wanted to have my own. So I'll just go through briefly kind of how this application works. Basically, you would select a protocol that you basically have, and then effectively in the background there is the idea of replacing the content that you would see in a typical protocol, which I have an example of here, right? So effectively you have the purpose, scope, description, etc. And my intent around this application was to try and make it flexible, because certainly I've seen that different sites have different ways of basically doing things, but this was certainly an initial attempt at the time that I did it. So effectively the face of the protocol is essentially here, and I'll have to go through each of the individual functions that are essentially there in greater detail, almost in separate videos. But essentially, my mindset was to make it relatively easy in order to kind of update per protocol. And then, if essentially, say that would be the face of the protocol, and the different kind of wordings which are put in place to be explicit, and then the concept of how the actual scripts themselves would be done. Effectively, you would have the test description, expected result, and then the actual result being held in essentially a database row as such, which I can go into kind of more detail on. But I'll just give an example here. I'd select, say, for example, a test case. Then I would select, say, just a particular step number. And essentially the idea here is that in terms of editing, you can actually edit the individual steps as they come along, just in the same way that you would have here. Here's step one, here's step two. And basically from there, then you're setting up the application for execution. My intent around this application is to make it as similar to a paper-based protocol as possible, and also not to put it in a position where it actually competes with the document management system and the standard kind of approvals which are there. The way I would want it is that if it were to be used, it would be fitting into a situation where you could pick the paper-based route, or you could pick the actual the digital route as such. You know what I mean, and that you would have an option, and that's the most realistic way to have something like this actually fit into a kind of a digital strategy as such, that you're not trying to eat up an entire quality system and try to replace it, that you're actually just trying to look at your little slot that you fit into, and then you basically go with it. My goal for this application, that it will be a free download. That's really kind of it. It's like many applications I've written, I've put it together, I've done it with some previous colleagues of mine, and then effectively it has sat there. So I want to try and get a kind of a website together for it. My intent around this application was mainly around Delta V. So what I wanted to do here was, I wanted to take something like a system here, like say we have a kind of a Wi-Fi or purified water distribution loop here. And then what I wanted to do was focus in on, say, for example, different examples. This is just an example of one PNID here. And what I wanted to have was, say, focus in on the running logic. Say, for example, in Delta V, or say, for example, in a PLC environment such as TIA. and effectively be able to run in and then actually look at the individual phases and actions as they would actually be done in Delta V, and give example test case scenarios and test script scenarios for stereotypical systems such as a CIP system and so on. Okay, so look, I'll follow this up with some videos on that application specifically, and I'll focus in on, say, for example, the sequencing and how to deal with defects and how attachments are digitally structured, and kind of the back end on the application as well. Thank you very much.